So this afternoon I'm going to share a presentation I've entitled Good Vegan Meals. Last camp meeting, I did a presentation, that's the camp meeting last year, of course. I did a presentation on Health and Temperance Department, the church's Health and Temperance Department, especially of free SDA churches. And I looked at the purpose, goals, and guidelines for health and temperance departments in churches and free SDA churches. And we looked at a number of Spirit of Prophecy references in this regard. And I'm going to just briefly review a few of them and move on into the material I want to delve into today. And pretty much what these will do is reinforce again how important health is, and especially diet is, in churches. This is from Counsels on Diets and Foods, page 157. If we can arouse the moral sensibilities of our people on the subject of temperance, which would in our today's language would be health, a great victory will be gained. Temperance in all things of this life is to be taught and practiced. Temperance in eating, drinking, sleeping, and dressing is one of the grand principles of the religious life. So this statement here establishes the fact that health is a part of our religion. It's a part of our practical religious life. It's not just something that we've cooked up, that it is indeed part of our religious life. And it's easy to understand why, because why? The Lord always wants what is best for us. The things that we learn and the things that we teach as far as health is concerned is really for our own good. He's not just arbitrarily making life difficult for us. He's trying to make life as healthy for us as possible. And religion encompasses all of that. We are to be fully mature, fully healthy, spiritually, mentally, physically, in all ways. We are to be completely well and healed. Last year we looked at a very strong statement that the Spirit of Prophecy makes regarding meat eating and ministers. In Counsels on Diets and Foods, page 453 over to 454, it says, "Why do some of our ministering brethren manifest so little interest in health reform?" And in those ... she basically says, well, it's because they're doing things that they don't really want to stop doing. No man should be set apart, and this is continuing on in the reference. No man should be set apart as a teacher of the people while his own teaching or example contradicts the testimony God has given his servants to bear in regard to diet, for this will bring confusion. His disregard of health reform will unfit him to stand as the Lord's messenger. This has always been, to me, a very tough statement she makes, because in plain terms, it's basically saying, if a pastor doesn't want to come up to standard on diet, and I'm going to say diet specifically because that's usually the hardest one for a lot of people to deal with. Sleeping and dressing and not smoking is probably easy for a lot of people. But what you eat 2 to 3 times a day can be a challenge. So here, the Spirit of Prophecy is saying, if a pastor isn't wanting to come up to standard on what he eats, on his diet, he shouldn't be standing in front of the people. He shouldn't be a pastor. That is a tough statement. And so, as I mentioned last year, we do make that a requirement for becoming a free SDA pastor, that at least the pastor is on a vegan diet, at least, because that's where the Spirit of Prophecy left us 160 plus years ago, or certainly well on his way to that, but preferably on a plant-based diet. That is the goal. In Spalding and Megan collection, page 32, we're told, the greatest cause of disease is in the food taken into the system, which in large is meat eating. So we're being told here, what is one of the biggest contributors to disease? Meat eating. So why wouldn't the Lord give us instruction on diet? Because our diets are one of the biggest factors, or risk factors, in many of the diseases and most major diseases. Eating animal fat and protein significantly increases the risk of a person getting any one or more of the major chronic diseases. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity. And obesity is connected with COVID, basically, because if a person is overweight or obese, your likelihood of getting COVID, a severe case of COVID, escalates drastically. And you really, really, really do not want to get cancer. It is not a walk in the park. It is not your common cold that you're going to get over in 3 weeks. It's even worse than all these people that talk about the challenges of COVID. Cancer, once it gets embedded, is a tough thing. So you really do not want to get cancer. One of the biggest ways of mitigating that risk, reducing that risk, and from what we're told in the spirit of prophecy, is eliminating meat eating. And that's why the association has taken such a strong stand on it too, because we are for the health of our people. You know, I'm not even going to ask the question, how many of us want to live long, healthy lives? Because I think we all want to live a long, healthy life. How many of us want to live a long, sickly life? No. How many of us want to live a short, sickly life? Or just a plain short life? No, no, no. So again, the Spirit of Prophecy is showing us what is the direction that we need to go. Counsels on Diets and Foods, 383. We are to give careful attention to our diet. It has been clearly presented, how? Clearly presented to me. So what is this implying? Clearly presented to me.
God told her.
Yes. So this was not, God told her, as the comment was, she didn't just cook this up. She did not just get up one morning and decide this is what she's going to do. Remember, Ellen White had to change her diet significantly too. She really did. She apparently had congestive heart failure and she was obese. And when she changed her diet, that drastically changed her. She lost 25 pounds in just over a year, apparently, when she changed her diet. So she had to make changes too. It has been clearly presented to me that God's people are to take a firm stand against meat eating. What kind of a stand? Firm stand. So again, that's why we are so particular with the pastors, that they have to be a vegetarian, preferably vegan, or a long ways toward that before they get any kind of documentation from the association. As was stated over the last couple days, the church goes as the leaders do. So how can we expect any difference to the congregation when the pastor goes out after preaching a sermon and goes to, McDonald's or some of those other places and has a steak? How are you expecting the congregation to be any better? You can't, because as the leader goes, that's going to be how the congregation. Yes, you might find one or two that is endeavoring to do better, but in large, the congregation is going to be at the level the pastor is. And going on in Counsels on Diets and Foods, page 384 and 359, it says, the light given me, again here it's the light given me, is that it will not be very long before we shall have to give up using any animal food. Even milk will have to be discarded. Disease is accumulating rapidly. And how are we to know when it is to be discarded? We know that when it does come, the Lord will provide. And as we talked about last camp meeting, there's like 7 different kinds of milk compared to cow's milk. And And so the Lord has abundantly provided. So yes, we are at a time that we are to take a firm stand against meat eating and a firm stand against any animal food at all. So what does that leave us, shall we say? It leaves us with what is labeled today as a vegan diet or a plant-based diet. Specifically, we want to look at a whole food plant-based diet because, is this generally plant-based? Alcohol is generally plant-based. It's made out of fermented, out of some kind of coconut or cane or grain or grapes. So yes, alcohol is technically plant-based. But that doesn't mean we should use it. Much candy is actually plant-based. I mean, some of that may have some milk in it, yes, but a lot of candy is actually, to a great extent, plant-based. But is that healthy? No. Research actually shows that if your vegan diet includes a significant amount of sugar and processed foods, you will experience little of the benefits of being vegan. What I just say? If your diet includes a lot of this kind of stuff and processed foods, you will experience little of the benefits of being vegan. So if we wonder why this person is sick, well, maybe they're including too much of that in their food, in their diet, even though they say they are plant-based. That is why we want to be whole food plant-based, using the whole foods, not the processed foods. What's the problem with processed foods? Is that it's taken out the majority of the vitamins and minerals, taken out the majority of fiber, which is extremely important for your gut health. And research is showing that your gut health has to do with has huge impacts on your immune system, has huge impacts on your brain, and just your body in general. So if your immune system and your nervous system are not up to health, you're not going to be healthy. So that's where we see the pathway going, is when we are not using whole foods and we're using processed foods, sugary foods, that we are really not gaining the benefits of a vegan diet that we really should. So let's consider a vegan diet, a vegan plate. We're going to consider this for our next few minutes. So in our vegan plate, we're going to see that half of it is vegetables. It doesn't like that. Half of it is vegetables. And of that other half, a quarter of it are beans and a quarter of it are grains. And we're going to look at a little bit more specifically at each of those portions as we go along. So here we have half of the plate is vegetables, and at least a quarter of that, at least a half of that half, which is a quarter of the plate, should be raw vegetables. And the key word here is at least. You can make that whole half a plate raw vegetables if you want. And if you are in a sickly condition, including more vegetables than even that is a good idea. But if we're talking of a standard maintenance diet, one that you're going to try to get your teenagers to follow too, this is something that we can talk about. So of that raw vegetables, there's so much that we can use. Raw leafy greens, lettuce, watercress, spinach. And yes, we can have some nice little salad dressing on it. It helps to make it go down a little nicer. So a little olive oil or maybe avocado oil, a little salt, maybe a little Bragg's, a little lemon juice, a little seasoning, garlic, whatever. That makes the salad go down a little nicer for those that are struggling with the concept of including that much salad in their plates. And we can include other oils too, flaxseed oil, and that's another way we can get flaxseed oil into our diet, is adding it to our salad dressing. Maybe half of the oil is going to be olive oil and half is going to be flaxseed oil. You can mix and match that up as well, and that works well. So we have a lot of raw vegetables, but especially if you can, try to have a raw leafy green every day. And as I've said before, if you've sat through some of my other presentations, I refer to the tree of life. What part of the tree of life is for the healing?
Leaves.
The leaves. You sure?
Yes.
Yes. It's not the fruit, it's the leaves. And what color are leaves?
Green.
They're green. So I think the Bible has been telling us for millennia that we need leaves if we want to be healed. So we do want to put that in on a daily basis as much as possible. Cooked vegetables can be a lot of different things. Cooked greens, there are different greens that can be used both raw and cooked, such as like kale. You can cook kale, you can eat baby kale raw. You can use beet greens. You can even eat some other greens that are needing to be cooked because they're tougher and they just need that cooking process to break down the toughness a little bit, such as like collard greens, mustard greens, the greens we had today. I know some of you like those greens. Swiss chard is a little bit softer. You might be able to get away with it raw, but generally Swiss chard is also cooked. So that's generally what is done for that. So you can have raw greens and cooked greens. And then there are vegetables that can go either direction, like beets. If you grate up beets, you can have raw beets. Have that part of your raw salad. You can cook beets then and have that part of your cooked vegetable. There are a number of vegetables that we can go either direction. Sweet peppers can go either direction. Onions too, but usually you're not going to just sit down and chow down on a lump of onions by itself. But if you like that, that's up to you. Cabbage is another one that will go either direction. We can have coleslaw or we can have cooked cabbage. Either way, it's fine. Broccoli can go either direction. Cauliflower can go either direction. Carrots can go either direction. And so we have variety on that. And I'll just mention that when we can, and we have the availability and the finances, it's good to have organic as much as possible. Or of course, if you're growing your own, that's even better yet. But as much organic that you can put into your plate, the better. Why? Because it has been proven that organic produce has more nutrients, more vitamins and minerals, non-organic. So our bodies need these vitamins and minerals to do all the different wonderful processes that it has to have. If we're stressed, we also need more nutrients. So there's a number of reasons why we want as much of those nutrients, and we want to select the vegetables, the kinds of things that have the most nutrients as possible. Just back here for 1 second. So as far as the challenge with this half of the plate, raw, for some people, raw salads is a challenge that they're going to have to get used to, including on a daily basis. For some people, just having that much vegetables is going to be a work. So the problem with the vegetable half is just not enough. That's generally the problem with the vegetable half. It's shrinking too much compared to the other ones. Now, looking at grains, the problem with the grains proportion is that it tends to expand and dominate and overwhelm. And it's all cultures that this happens to be generally the case. And instead of it being a quarter or maybe even a third, it becomes a half or 2/3. And I'm hearing some laughter. I'll tell of an experience that we had over in the South Pacific. I remember one time we went over there and the plate was probably 3/4 rice, at least. Maybe with a sprig or two of green. And and the thing is, they were growing potato tops and green stuff. And we were saying, okay, where is it? And we encouraged them to change some of the proportions. You remember? And by the time we finished the stay there, the green proportion did increase. But see, that was a cultural thing. So it's not just North America here that we tend to emphasize the grains a lot. And the problem with the grain section is that is one of the most processed portions of our diet. One of the most processed, meaning that's where they've been processed, that the vitamins and minerals have been taken out, the fiber has been taken out for almost entire case, and we have white flour products. We have white rice. We have all the different refined things. We have sugar, which if it's coming from sugar beets, it was certainly a very refined thing. So our problem on this particular one is it growing too much and it being in a processed format as opposed to whole wheat, like whole wheat bread, brown rice, and unrefined cornmeal and things like that. It's interesting that I believe that a lot of this supposed gluten intolerance that people have, it's because of the refining for one, but also the pesticides that is sprayed on it. And if you change to 100% organic, a lot of this supposed gluten intolerance, I think, is going to disappear. It's interesting that when we were even on this tour with Pastor Mayer a couple of weeks ago, one of the tour peoples was saying, you know, over there in Europe, they have no problem eating the bread, but over here they do. So it's not grain inherently. It is something that is being done to the grain that is producing a lot of this gluten tolerance. And so one of the first things I think we can do is make sure that our grains, our breads are 100% whole wheat organic. And if you can make your own bread, better yet. I make our own bread. They've got these bread makers. I used to make our bread by hand. Started getting too busy at a point in time. Pastor Herbert even used to knead it for me, 5 big loaves at a time. But we ended up getting a little busy, and it became more difficult to find the time to do that. So I got a bread maker. I got a wheat mill. So I do 100% organic, whole wheat bread every time I do bread. And it's fresh ground. I mean, I grind in batches, but that wheat is no more than 4 weeks old at best, at most, from the time it was ground to the time we're eating it. And that's generally not going to be the case on the flours that you buy from the store. Also in this category are things like our starchy roots, potatoes and yams, and those of you from different cultures and different countries can probably fill in all the other varieties like cassava, et cetera, sweet potatoes, and all those kind of things. That is going to fit into this category too. So again, showing they're great to have, but don't let them dominate the plate too much. Also now, in moving on to the next section, what I was showing here is for people who are healthy and using whole grains, well, we could have a little latitude. I'm not going to say that you've got to exactly have a quarter plate and that's it. But if you're healthy and you're using whole grains, we can probably have a little wiggle room that, all right, it's a little bit more than quarter, but at least it's healthy grains. You're getting your fiber, you're getting your vitamins and minerals in the grains. If you're using refined grains, yeah, let's keep it tight. And if you are not well, you again do not want to start shrinking your vegetable proportions, really. In the beans, nuts, seeds, and legumes category. There is just so much. And it's important that we include this portion of the plate and have a good representation of the higher protein foods. We need it. Getting by on rice and broccoli, you might do fine for a while, but that's not going to be the best thing because it doesn't have a higher protein food. You need to have a higher protein food as much as possible. And if you notice, at least I notice, if you eat a meal, if you eat like a breakfast of pancakes and fruit, and that's it, I'll be hungry in 2 hours. But if you add some scrambled tofu, hey, we're good to the next meal. That's because protein enables you to stay from one meal to the next. And most of the time when people go from meat eating to plant-based diets, if they don't do well, it's because they're probably not including enough higher protein foods in their diet. They need to make sure they have higher protein foods in their diet. I mean, it makes sense. Meat is high protein. Their bodies are used to that. So they need that emphasis on the higher protein plant foods, especially in that transition time, because that's what their bodies are used to. So here we could have all kinds of beans: kidney beans, brown beans, black beans, white beans, pinto beans, pink beans, lots of beans. So if you don't like one, you can always have another. And soybeans. Soybeans have been acknowledged as being a complete protein. They're great. Just make sure they're organic, because if they're not organic, they probably are genetically modified in this country. So make sure your tofu is non-GMO and all your soy stuff is non-GMO. Otherwise, it probably is genetically modified. But it's been acknowledged that that is a complete protein. And when we say complete protein, if you went back a few years in the vegetarian evolution over the decades, we used to think, oh, you've got to combine certain foods in one meal, otherwise you're going to be protein deficient. Well, we learned that the body wasn't quite so particular. And as long as you have a good representation of all the different parts on the plate over a day or two, you'll be fine. It's not like if you don't have rice and beans in one meal, you're going to fall apart. But what that did is in having rice and beans or cornbread and chili, it did provide a complete protein, because those two different plant sources provided different amino acids that together they provided a complete protein. A complete protein meaning something, all the proteins your body needs for health. So that's soy. I'll also mention, as far as the beans are concerned, if a person has difficulty with beans, making a transition to eating beans, start with the smaller beans. Say if they end up with digestive upset or gas or whatever using beans, start with the smaller beans. Start with lentils. Lentils are almost never gassy for people. Lentils are really great. Lentils are a great start. Otherwise, the small beans, maybe you like some of the small brown beans or the small white beans. And also, when you cook them, make sure you soak them overnight first and throw that water away, because that helps to soak off some of it's a certain carbohydrate that's like a fiber that gives the gas, that we don't have the enzyme to break that down, and so that's why we get gas from beans, and for some of us that is more of a problem than others. But if you soak the beans, throw the water away, soak them overnight, throw the water away, and then cook them, it's a lot less problematic. Some people find meat tenderizer is helpful in mitigating the gas situation. Also, another reason why we need to have higher protein foods, besides we just need the amino acids, we need to be able to be comfortable from meal to meal without feeling like we're starving to death, is that as we get older, that we tend to that our muscles tend to shrink. And so we need to provide a higher protein amount in our diets to counteract this tending of atrophy of muscles as we age. So as we get older, we need to make sure that we have this higher protein part of our plate sufficiently represented. Nuts are also a great thing. And again, we have so many things to choose from: cashews, almonds, ground nuts, peanuts, macadamia nuts, walnuts, pecans, and others that I haven't mentioned. They can be used in so many different ways. Now, of course, they are higher in protein, not only higher in protein, but higher in calories because they're higher in fat. So if you are trying to lose weight or you have a problem with weight, be moderate in these guys because you can gain weight with nuts. You certainly can. But that's great for those of you who might need to gain some weight. Throw an extra handful or two of nuts in your diet and that can help you do that. But for those that are needing to lose weight, be a little cautious because fat has 9 calories in it versus 4 calories for protein and carbohydrate. So fat has twice as much calories, over twice as much calories as protein and fat. So just keep that in mind depending upon where you are in that spectrum of managing your weight. There's also sunflower seeds. And I was thinking about this the other night when I was reviewing this. Sunflower seeds. We feed birds in our backyard, and one of the birds that we get are chickadees. And you know what chickadees love, right? The little black and white birds. They're so energetic. They love sunflower seeds. Oh, they love sunflower seeds. And we give them these sunflower seeds that's still in the hull. And their little tiny beaks, they're too thin to crack the seed open, whereas the cardinals with fat beaks, they can just crush this hull and get the seed out, no problem. But the chickadees have thin beaks. They don't have the strength in that beak to crush it and get the seed out. So what they do instead is they hold it between their feet and bang on it with their beak. And they're so cute and they're so energetic. I was thinking, I guess sunflower seeds will do that for us humans too. We need to make sure that we have some sunflower seeds lobbed in from time to time perhaps, so we can be like these chickadees that are so energetic. And one thing chickadees can do that I don't know if we can do, they can eat and sing at the same time. We've seen it. Besides sunflower seeds, there's sesame seeds, flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, squash seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, so many different seeds that we can use in this category. Another really great part in this category are garbanzo beans or chickpeas. How many of you love hummus? Some of us love hummus. I think hummus is very satisfying, and I think the reason is because of the protein content. And you can use it on so many things. You can use it on crackers, you can use it on chips, you can use it on bread, you can make sandwiches out of it, you can use it with your raw vegetables as a dip. There's just so many things that you can do with it. And again, it's a very satisfying thing. Another thing that would probably fit into this category are like the peas, like the black-eyed peas. Peas are actually surprisingly high in protein. And that's becoming more in the health food consciousness that you'll see pea protein, whereas before it used to be gluten or soy usually for protein, but now they're bringing in pea protein. So peas are also very good for a protein source. So, an overview of our plate. Ideally, half of it should be vegetables, a combination of raw and cooked, and we have so many different varieties to choose from. A quarter of it approximately are grains, should be, and starchy vegetables, should be organic as much as possible. And I'll say also for like corn, particularly like corn chips, try to get organic corn chips because if it's not organic, it is probably GMO'd. If it's not organic, let it say non-GMO. The two most genetically modified crops in this country is soy and corn. So try to get at least that non-GMO, at least let it be the symbol. And there are people that say, well, we can't trust the labels. And that may be possibly the case, but you know what? The Lord says we do the best we possibly can. And so we do consciously look for that, and if they're lying to us, we'll let the Lord take care of them. Because our health is ultimately in His hands, and He just wants us to do the best we can. That's what actually the Spirit of Prophecy said. We're merely asked to do the best we can. So, vegetables, grains, and also a sufficient representation of our beings in this category. Can we have a bad vegan plate? Oh yes, we can have a bad vegan plate. We could have, like we said, most of it rice and white rice, yes, and white rice at that, with maybe a little bit of, I don't know, ketchup. You know, why I say ketchup is because it has been statistically shown that even counting ketchup and French fries, the average person in this country doesn't eat, I don't think, even half the amount of recommended vegetables that we should be eating. And yes, ketchup's plant-based and French fries are plant-based, but that's not really the meal we want to be subsisting on. So this is the objective as we move to a plant-based diet in our churches, in our homes, that it is whole food, plant-based. And if it's a transition, that is fine. It's a journey for a lot of us. If it seems overwhelming to anybody, if it seems overwhelming to even a church member that you're working with, even if they're making little steps, just coming off of meat is a big deal for a lot of people. Don't get into, well, you know, you got to have this much cooked vegetables, and you got to have this, and then you got to have this. Don't make it too complicated. Just leaving off meat is a big deal for a lot of people. So we want to just keep that in mind and have a healthy vegan diet. So that being said, even beginning from last year, we were starting to call upon Free SDA churches to make a commitment. The International Association of Free Seventh-day Adventists is calling on all member churches and ministries to commit to serving only plant-based foods at all fellowship lunches and church-sponsored and church member-sponsored events. For some, this requires a change in what they are serving at church and at events. However, it is important that the meals that Free SDA churches provide on Sabbath lunch or at sponsored socials, weddings, youth outings, funerals, in other words, anything that has anything of a Free SDA name attached to it in any way, directly or even through members, needs to be, we're hoping that this is the commitment that is being made, are leading the way in change. So by making this commitment to having only plant-based dishes, plant-based meals at all church lunches, all church functions, whether it's a wedding or a funeral, and you know, different members will say, well, you know, I've got this set of family coming in from out of state, and they're used to eating meat, and you know, I just need to make sure they're happy. Well, if that's the only reason they're coming to your wedding, I think it's a misguided reason to come to your wedding or a funeral or anything else. Because if they're only coming to your function for the food that they're going to get, that's certainly a misguided reason to be there in the first place. But you know what, on top of that? We've seen that when we put out our vegan food, our nice barbecue tofu and our well-seasoned chili, and maybe even a little bit of the fake meat or whatever, What goes first? That goes first. What still is in the pot, on the pan? Their chicken, their beef, whatever it is, and they're eating up our food, and they're saying how wonderful it is. And you know, we say we want to be missionary-minded. Why can't we be missionary-minded in our social events, in our weddings, in our funerals, in our, if you're serving a meal after a Bible study? Anything that has to do with church, why don't we use that as an outreach of showing a different way of life, and also showing that the reason we're doing this is because from all that we see in the Bible and research, this is the way to healthier life. And part of our religion is to be healthy not just spiritually, but also physically. And so this is part of our religion. And use it as a missionary outreach as opposed to caving into family expectations. And thus we're leading the way in change for our family members, a change for the better. This will influence members and visitors to embark on change in their homes. Because as I said last year, we're not going into a member's home and opening their fridge and say, let me see what you got there. But what you serve in church, you have full control over. And what you serve in church can then have an influence upon what they do at home. And we've seen that even among our church members. We've had people come initially to the church that they didn't know how to cook vegan, but they got involved in the food group. They were assigned to make a dish, given a recipe. They started to cook, and that doesn't taste too bad. And eventually, they're part of the vegan family. So church can be a huge way of impacting people's personal lives. But it has to start from the leadership. It has to start from the pastor and from the health and temperance department. That's why the health and temperance department, as I said last year, needs to be committed to the vegan diet. At least vegetarian, but really they need to be aspiring to the vegan diet. They need to be committed to that, and the pastor needs to be committed to that. Because as the leadership goes, that's how the church goes. And so the association is calling on all Free SDA churches to commit to this journey of committing no animal products at church-sponsored events. And last year, we talked about something. We talked about a cookbook. And we have done it. Sabbath cookbook for Free SDA churches. Now that doesn't mean you're cooking the meals on Sabbath, but it means that what is contained inside of it is for Sabbath. And so I think it turned out pretty nice. It was quite a work. And so we start out with the purpose of this cookbook, showing how Adventists used to be known to be vegetarians. But that has changed over the decades. And we want to go back to what that was like. We want to remove all of this, but at the same time, the purpose of this cookbook is to help remove the stress in churches for serving only plant-based meals at functions. So in this cookbook, we are providing all you need for Sabbath lunch. Week 1, menu, fried rice, seasoned tofu with teriyaki sauce, sauteed vegetables, and tossed salad with dressing. That's your menu. So we've got a menu for you. And then we tell you how to do the fried rice. We tell you how to do the sauteed vegetables. We tell you how to do the seasoned tofu. And we refer you back to page 5 for the salads and salad dressings. There's 3 salad ideas that you can use as is, or mix or match, or whatever you want. And then we have 3 salad dressing ideas for you that you can use as is, or mix or match, however you want on any one particular meal. So the cookbook's purpose is indeed to remove the stress of churches wanting to know or trying to figure out what to cook as a whole food plant-based meal for Sabbath. And the reason we're doing it for churches is because the recipes are designed for 25 people. It's not for a whole family. I mean, you can downsize the recipe if you want, that's fine. But there's probably 1 million vegan cookbooks out there now that a family can use. How many cookbooks, vegan cookbooks, are designed for churches? I don't know of any. I don't know of any vegan cookbook that is put together with a congregation quantity in view. But this is what this is, for 25 people. So if you have a congregation of 50, you'll double the recipe. If you have a congregation of half that, you half it. But we chose 25 as kind of a happy medium for now, because many Free SDA churches are not very large congregations compared to what the conference churches are. And so we don't want it to be stressful in moving away from all these animal products. And how to use the cookbook. We also have that. We talk about a little bit about some of the rest of the references that I just shared as far as the importance of the leaders of the churches taking a firm stand on dietary. And when we have gone to different churches and mentioned the possibility of having a vegan cookbook for the church, for Free SDA Church, it was always met with enthusiasm. So I trust that it will continue to be met with enthusiasm. And then it also says that we anticipate there being future additions to this book. And I'm sure there will be. Right now we don't have any pictures. We didn't have any time, other pictures other than the front. We didn't have time to put into all of that. So perhaps in future editions we can have that. Also, it tells you that if you want to make a contribution or a suggestion to the cookbook, let us know. If you find any mistakes, please also let us know. I have found 2 already. One has to do with and it had to do with the redesign of the cover. And redesigning the cover from what it was on the first draft, it repaginated it, so it says on page 7 to go to see the salads on page 7. The salad's on page 5. And it also, on page 3, where it says, talks about how to use the cookbook, it talks about going to page 36 to find a picture of the vegan plate, which is similar to what I just showed you. It's really page 34. Again, it has to do with the revamping of the cover. So if you find mistakes, let us know. We'll correct that for the next one. Any suggestions? And you can mix and match the recipes that you like. So if you want the fried rice from week 1, but you like, I don't know, you want oven roasted beets instead of sauteed vegetables, fine, do that. But still try to keep with the theme of what we showed. A good proportion of vegetables, so basically what it means with week number 1, your fried rice, is about 1/4 of the plate. Your seasoned tofu with teriyaki sauce is about another 1/4 of the plate. Your sauteed vegetables is about another 1/4 of the plate. And your tossed salad and dressing is about another 1/4 of the plate. So you keep that theme, even though you mix and match as you desire, continue with the theme. And we've got recipes for dessert about every other Sabbath. And the reason we did it every other Sabbath is because we want to let people know you do not have to have dessert every Sabbath lunch. It's fine, you can have it sometimes, but don't have to have it every. So about every other recipe week is a dessert. Some of the interesting things to me as like vegan mock meatloaf. We have a chickpea naan wrap with barbecue tofu. If you hadn't just eaten lunch, this probably would have been making you feel pretty hungry right now. We have vegan berry crumble bars, pound cake, We have tofu pasta salad. We had a pasta salad yesterday that was pretty tasty. Oven roasted beets. Haystacks. Does everybody know what haystacks are? If you grew up an Adventist, you have to know what haystacks are. Does anybody not know what haystacks are? What's that? That's right. If you don't know what haystacks are, you did not grow up an Adventist. But just for the record, for anybody that doesn't know what haystacks are, it is one of the easiest, most filling, most fastest putting together meal that you can get. And if you're not full at the end, it's because it's your own fault. Basically what you do is you put down your corn chips, and as we said, organic corn chips preferred. Then you'll put down maybe some kind of beans, pinto beans or kidney beans or something like that. Chili beans, yeah, you can put down chili beans. If you do add rice, you just don't want to do overboard because your corn is kind of your starch anyhow, but you can put down a little rice, brown rice, organic. And then you put down things like chopped tomatoes and olives and onions and green onions, bell peppers, avocados, chopped lettuce, and some vegan sour cream, and some salsa, and some cashew cheese or other vegan cheese. And by the time you finish, if you have not managed your portions, it is a stack. So yes, that's the Adventist haystack. Oh yes, so we have carob eclair cake, along with mock chicken pot pie and gravy and brown rice. We've thrown in soft tacos and Mexican rice. Vegan mac and cheese. It's a pretty good vegan mac and cheese that we've got going here for you, and barbecue tofu. Probably this is going to be a favorite because once you get a good barbecue tofu and a good vegan mac and cheese, you have to be careful you don't overfill your plate. And then we have green beans and tossed salad with that. Some other things, scrambled tofu and pita pockets, broccoli, vegan cheesecake cups with that meal, chili, cornbread, and coleslaw. A good chili is always really nice and tasty, especially as we start to get into the cooler months. Spaghetti with meatballs and veggies and whole wheat garlic bread. Of course, we got to have our tossed salad. And in that, the meatballs are higher protein proportion of the plate, and vegan apple pie. So that sounds good. And then the last one we have for Sabbath lunch, lasagna with vegan cheese, lightly steamed broccoli, tossed salad with dressing, and then like what we did today, we just got a vegan cake from a local bakery. So there are 13 weeks inside here. That means you can use one a week for a whole quarter. And you know what? Next quarter, start it all over again, because nobody's going to remember what you ate 12 weeks ago. So yes, we'll probably expand it sometime in the future, but this could last us a really long time just as it is. We're creatures of habit. Even at home, when you think about what you eat at home, we typically eat a certain menus over and over, more often than once every 12 weeks. So having it on a 13-week quarter basis shouldn't be a problem. Then what we also threw in here was a couple menus that are under Church Social, Church Social 1 and Church Social 2. Just kind of it's in a lighter-hearted environment where it might not be such a formal meal, but it's like vegan burritos. You know, where you got your burritos, your beans, your taco seasoning, your lettuce. It's kind of like a haystack, but wrapped in a burrito wrap instead. So that is really nice. And then hoagie sandwiches with baked tofu. So that is also really good. So that is what we have for you today. We have enough cookbooks for everybody. And if you are a leader in a pre-SDA church, please take back enough cookbooks for at least the leader, your health and temperance leader and or department, and the food group leader, whoever is in charge of planning your Sabbath lunches. Make sure at least those people have cookbooks. And please, if you can, if maybe you're already there, if you're already there, wonderful. If you've already committed to the plant-based diet menu, that is great. And I know some of you already are. For those of you that are on the journey, great. I hope this helps you on the journey. But at the same time, we know that, as Pastor Herbert said this morning, there are going to be churches coming in from the conference. Are they going to be vegan? Probably not. But we can help them. We can help them that direction, and that's the energy we want to create from now, that when they come in, they already see the energy going this direction. So they just join the procession, if I can take the word from Matthew 25, that they're joining the procession. And they have to join the procession if they're going to keep up with us. So it makes it easier, though, in the transition. So that is what we have for you today. And it is a labor of love. And we trust that it will be a great benefit for all of you and all of your churches. Any questions in the next 5 minutes? Yes, Marlene. We might need a roving mic. You know, while she does that, I'm just going to say from a personal standpoint, I love being a vegan. You know, to me, it's so sad when you go past these semis that have, you're just seeing white feathers flying. And I'm thinking, I'm so glad I'm vegan. Or you see that you get behind the semi and you smell, what's that smell? And then you see it's either loaded with pigs or cows. And you know, the spirit of prophecy makes it very clear that how we treat the animals, we are going to meet that in the judgment. Pastor Herbert showed in the timeline this morning, in all the events, there is going to be the judgment of the living. We're going to have to meet how our diets contributed to the suffering or lack of suffering of his creatures. Yes, Marlene.
Okay, so I wanted to make comment on what you had mentioned before. Coming in as a new vegan, I did not know how to cook, period. I did not know how to cook anything. Whether it's non-vegan, I wasn't a very good cook. And coming into the church, I learned Sister Debbie Smith. I have to give her the credit. She helped me along the way a lot, especially with that barbecue tofu. Now I'm a pro of barbecue tofu. And so I just wanted to say, everything you were talking about in the beginning, I can give a testament to it. When I learned how to cook it, and I would have a gathering at home, my family members would come in and friends, and I would always have the vegan this side and the meat over that side. And then before I know, they eat off all the vegan stuff and they left the meat. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this? You guys need to, you need to take it with you. And even to this day, when we have like a gathering like a Thanksgiving, the same thing. We have a handful of vegan people, and then whatever we carry is gone. And then we don't have anything to eat, so we always have to hide it. But I just wanted to say, the church, as you mentioned, the church is a great help with that, because that's what helped me. If not for the Adventist faith, I wouldn't have been a vegan. And so I just wanted to, just to say how grateful that I am being an Adventist and being a vegan. That helps me in even health tremendously, and help me now that I have a ministry in that, so I can help to lead people who are even vegan, but they're eating the wrong thing. They're eating too much starch. So my classes help them to know that you got to proportion just how you have it there, more raw or more veggies rather than the grains. We have to proportion it out. So thank you so much for that.
And just for everybody to know, Marlene has a vegan restaurant not far from the airport. So if you go in and out of the airport, you can stop by Marlene's. It's plant-based vegan divine. You can find it on the internet or on Happy Cow, right? Yes. Happy Cow. I'll just say, if any of you travel, you need Happy Cow. Does everybody know Happy Cow? It's an app that you get on your phone, and it's one of the best ways to find vegan or vegan-friendly eating establishments around the world. And she's on Happy Cow.
And even if you don't have Happy Cow, because my phone's too full to put any new apps, you can just Google it, and it'll come up and you've got all that list of stuff. But what I wanted to suggest...
Okay, wait for the mic. Yes, we've got a mic. What was the comment was that Google is such now that you can do also just a search for restaurants, and it's gotten... Or Happy Cow, okay. Happy Cow without having to have the app. There's a website for Happy Cow.
Yes. So what I wanted to mention about when you talked about the fruit and pancakes, for those that don't like tofu or can't use too much of that, I found that just some almond butter on the pancakes, along with like raw honey or pure maple syrup or something like that, you're getting, if you got a good spread of almond butter, there's your protein in a simple way that's tasty.
Very good, thank you. Was there another? Okay. Was there another comment at all? Okay, in the back. As soon as we're ready for the mic, Sister Chung, in the back. Mic with mic. Right there.
Hi. This is more of, I guess, a question for the church in general, because our medical entities, they are not supportive. Our physicians are not trained to heal people who are choosing a different way of eating, and so they don't support the things that they're hearing from the patients sometimes. And my question is, how does the church advise that you leverage a transition to a vegan type diet when your physician is, promoting something other than that?
Right. That was a good question. As far as training your physician, there is fortunately now some really great organizations that have taken up the vegan cause. Like Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has a bunch of stuff, and these are physicians. So if they're wanting physician level stuff, these people put out physician level stuff that should meet their need. And it's getting much better now. There's that, there's also, that one comes to mind, but that's not the only one. But Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine puts out a lot of physician level stuff. And then as far as you personally making that transition, when we're making transitions in our personal environments, there are, at least fortunately, some things that we don't have to make a lot of changes to if we're eating a relatively healthy diet. Like we should, even if you're a meat eater, I hope you're eating some vegetables. So typically, that doesn't have to change unless you're seasoning your vegetables with bacon or something like that. Then instead, just choose a different seasoning. As far as making that transition, there are different ways. Some people like to do it very quickly and just make a change overnight, and that's it. For some people, their bodies do require a little change as far as from the meat to the plant-based diet. But it has been shown your intestinal flora, your friendly bacteria, change very quickly in a matter of days. In a matter of a week, you can have different intestinal flora. From this week, you change your diet, and the next week, you can have different intestinal flora. So it changes very rapidly. So you don't need a year to make an adjustment. If you give yourself 30 days, that should be plenty for your intestinal flora. And as you do that, you can choose different days of the week to be completely plant-based, different meals, and start increasing that. And try to find menus that you like. Try to find foods, plant-based foods that you like, because if you don't like the food, you're not going to stay on a vegan diet. You need to find at least some foods. It doesn't necessarily have to be maybe a full. I guess it's 13 in here. This would be enough for 2 weeks, which would be good. But try to have a couple weeks of foods that you like, that are plant-based, so that you're happy. And as one of the references here in the back says, we have some references, quotes on diet in the back. It says, and it's actually a continuation of the reference that talked about the greatest cause of diseases is animal eating meat. And she goes on and says, when you remove the meat from the table, you have a work to do to substitute articles of food tasteful and appetizing in fruits and grains. Meat will soon be forgotten in arousing the conscience and the determined will or decision brought into action. So we make that change, but we want to make it so you're enjoying the food. There is to be no forcing the mind, but educating it to view the subject from a right standpoint, a positive standpoint. Yes, Janet. I think Janet was next.
In transitioning it depends on how sick you are and how determined you are to do the transition. When I transitioned from eating meat to plant-based, I was literally dying from breast cancer. I prayed a lot, and by the time I had been transitioned, I had my doctor's train. Because doctors are the hardest people to convince. They'll tell you it's not going to work. The entire time, my doctors, my specialists, my cardiologists, and my chemo doctor watched me for years. And they said, whatever you do, or whatever you were doing, if I told my family, if I ever get cancer, I'll come to you.
Praise
So
the Lord.
you have to be determined
Praise
to
the
do
Lord.
that transition. And with prayers and God help, and your brothers and sisters around you.
And that's where the
You'll
church
make it.
family is because
Yes.
the people around you influence you. And if your church is plant-based, it's a huge help. It really is. Yes, Sister Martha.
From a therapeutic perspective, I'm coming now. It is easy for Seventh-day Adventists, whether they are or not, to talk about a vegan, vegetarian diet. But when you have converts, newly baptized members coming to the church with phobias and fears, hearing Adventists talk about being vegan and vegetarian, we need nutritionists who will be as counselors, as therapists, because a lot of these people have attachment disorder to food that we appear to take very lightly. And even some of those who claim to be vegans and vegetarians really are not. And we must have a system in our church that can help people make the transition.
And I
because
think we do.
people have serious attachment to fish.
Yeah.
To fish and lamb and chicken and pork.
And
And to talk
we-
about being a vegetarian next week or next year, it's a joke. And we need therapists in the church who can help people. Whether you're born into the faith or converted in the faith, you are struggling with flesh eating.
And you know what?
But they're ashamed to say it.
With the Spirit of Prophecy, all of us can be those therapists. Because the Spirit of Prophecy has given us along with the Holy Spirit, yes, has given us. What did she say here? We have to have substitutes that are tasteful and appetizing. Most of this attachment has to do with taste, the taste buds. So yes, we have vegan fish that tastes as much like vegan fish that I don't like fish, so I don't care for it so much, but people that like the fish, that's their thing, fine. So it's not so much of, we gotta know how many grams of protein are in that compared to the fish. And when it really comes down to daily life, I'm talking about now. They're not gonna be going in their kitchen and saying, oh, okay, my meat had this, and hummus has this, and veggie fish has this. They're going by how it tastes, how it looks, and what is the encouragement that the church is having. And you know one thing, veganism is not a what shall I say, underground movement anymore. It's a major thing. If a person hasn't heard the word vegan by now, they've probably been living under a rock. So it's not like we had to do it 30, 40 years ago, where it was this big effort to explain what it was and so forth. We have been helped tremendously by the New Age community to make it a publicly known thing. What we do is help that into a church environment, showing that it is part of God's plan for us to be healthy holistically and provide the support, because a lot of the necessity, a big part of making a transition is having the support mechanism around you. Even if you know, oh, that fish has this much and I can substitute this bean for that, it's the support mechanism that's probably going to do a whole lot more than what a therapist sitting down across the table from that person is going to do. What are your friends doing? What are the people that you're hanging out with doing? What are the people that you're fellowshipping with? What are they doing? And that's what we want in the Free SDA churches, is to provide that support, that energy, that commitment, that encouragement, the new ideas that they can now go into their own home and make that change in a relatively painless way. Yes, Michael?
In the church, and even from way back, but especially even now, that is part of what the Health and Temperance Department is supposed to be doing and functioning as. Yeah. And that's what we have to do.
That's what it was supposed to. And unfortunately, I know in the nominal Adventist churches, shall I say, we hear stories about health and temperance being relegated to name only almost. But that is what we're trying. I think I'm going to take you as the last. Luna, if you say anything, it's going to have to be in 5 seconds, because I am well over my time.